Welcome to our webinar. My name is Kris Haynes, and today I'm going to be presenting the value of using a Dell Vertex in an education setting. So working with Dell Technologies now for many years, you get familiar with the portfolio, the product sets, and the clients that they're best suited to. And over the certainly the past 5 or 6 years that I've been working with this product, the Dell Vertex is severely unloved in my opinion. It's a solution that works very, very well, and hopefully I'm going to go through some key points today with you to get that point across, and to give you a real virtual interactive tour of what the Dell Vertex has on offer, and how ultimately I think it's a great solution to consider if you are a business leader in an education establishment. So what you're going to get from this webinar today is ultimately a better understanding of the Dell Technologies Vertex solution. So we're going to, as I said, I'm going through the interactive walkthrough. So we've got a spin through demo that we can whiz through today. Also want to have a look at an idea around how an all-in-one integrated solution might fit well into your environment. And that's not me trying to say to you guys, look, okay, everybody's talking about cloud. Everybody is talking about hyper-converged, super converged. There's a new converge coming down the way, I'm pretty sure. So this isn't that. The idea behind this is that we can fit more into a smaller footprint at a lower cost point. And it's really well suited to education for those reasons. And then I kind of touched on it already, but my third point, the peace of mind that we're not just talking today about cloud and hyperconverged. So hopefully a little bit of a break away from what everyone else is trying to suggest might be best, and why it's not necessarily always the best answer. So speaking with some of our customers in education, these are the most common areas where people say to us, these really are our current challenges, and it's a real problem for us. So the most common that I think we see on that list is around budget cuts. No one really can honestly say that they haven't seen budget cuts, or at least held back certain projects for future years, whether that's a sign of the times, a sign of austerity. It is what it is. Unfortunately, we're not getting handouts left, right, and centre at the moment. So how do we use technology to our advantage with a limited budget? Keeping everyone happy is also one that comes up quite a lot at the minute. So yes, we might have less money, but we now have more people to please. The end users, the students, are particularly involved in that as well. People's perceptions are particularly involved in that. How the school is perceived from a technology standpoint can sometimes depict whether or not the child even goes to that school. So keeping everyone happy and maintaining perceptions is actually really, really difficult. The other side of it is data governance and IT security. So there were a number of cases over the last 12 months of ransomware attacks, one particularly close to ourselves, who suffered the outage of a ransomware attack without backups. And unfortunately, it's a sign of the times. If you're not looking after your data, if you're not putting everything you possibly can into security, how are we expected to protect our data? So this is certainly the top 5, I think, current challenges for IT in education. So hopefully we can address some of these today as well. When we look at the budgets, the reduction in budgets to me means that we need more agility, right? These are national statistics, and one of the things that crops up most prominently is that 40% of servers in an average company's data center are more than 3 years old. Now, we know from experience that in school environments, that's quite common anyway, but it does mean that whatever you put in place today has to be able to be agile again in 3 years, and again perhaps in 5 years. Whatever we put in place has to be able to scale, has to be able to flex, has to be able to adapt to whatever is put in place. And given that technology is changing so quickly, we need a product that not only just ticks a box for us today, but ticks a box for us tomorrow as well. Why not put it all in the cloud, right? One of the things that everybody is talking about. You go out and ask for a server quote, and they say, why aren't you putting it in the cloud? The most obvious reasons for that are things like risk management, cost management, connectivity management. I've spoken to schools quite a number of times around cloud services, and a lot of the things I get back are things like budgets, so cost management. If you guys can't control your costs the next year, how are you expected to put a proposal through the door that is a 3-year backup? You just can't. How are you able to do risk management when the data has left your site? You can't. And ultimately, another one that I get is connectivity management. It's a little bit rarer these days than it was, but Connectivity management is still a relatively common one, where you just can't get the ability to guarantee a connection out to the outside world. So again, how can you guarantee the ability to consume cloud services if you can't guarantee the ability to have an outside line? So why might the Dell VRTX be a good fit for education? The solution itself is scalable. What I mean by scalability in this case is you can actually daisy chain 9 of these things together. Now that's brilliant. If you go to your head of business finance and say, do you know what, we'll buy one today, and if we need one in 3 years, we'll just buy another one and we'll hook it together. If we acquire a school as part of an academy trust, we buy 3 more. It doesn't matter. They're scalable. It's flexible in the sense that not only can you scale out, but you can scale up. So we can put 9 together, we know that, but we can also adjust the storage in each one. So we've got storage pools, we've got compute pools, we can adjust the network, we can adjust the RAID, we can adjust the power supplies. So it's hypervisor agnostic. And so that means VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, Zen Server, all of those products are supported. The platform itself is resilient. So within each node, we have multiple CPUs, we have multiple DIMM slots, we have multiple NICs, we have multiple power supplies. Within the unit itself, there are several layers of failover fans, several layers of failover batteries. Everything within the environment and chassis is resilient. This thing is meant to be a data center in a box. And that's what I believe it really delivers to an education establishment. And it's cost effective. Actually, the price point of these units is very, very competitive. And so I really do think it's a great fit for schools who are looking to meet something that is agile, flexible, scalable, hypervisor agnostic, resilient, and ultimately ticks every one of those boxes at a great price. Okay, so I promised you flexibility, I promised you scalability. So enough promises from me. I want to show you the product now, give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We'll have a look at some of the features within it. I've actually got an interactive demo lined up where I can actually show you some of this. So bear with me, I'll load that up and we'll come back in just a second. We have the Dell Poweredge Vertex here, and ultimately this is a really good solution for schools who are looking for not quite to make the hyperconverged move just yet, but ultimately to get somewhere in between with a bit of flexibility thrown in, but ultimately an amazing amount of power thrown into a very, very small condensed 5U server solution. I'm a big fan of this box, as I think I've said before, and to be honest with you, I can't see a use case where this box doesn't actually fit the measure. It's a fantastic bit of kit. It can be scaled unanimously. In fact, what you see in front of you there, the 5U, it's a 5U Dell Vertex, okay, Vertex chassis, and within that is a heck of a load of power, which we'll go into in just a moment. But you can also scale these things out. As many as 9 of them can be daisy chained together. Now, if I'm totally honest with you, 9 is the absolute maximum you would ever contemplate doing. But the reality is 2, maybe 3 of these units together, and you've practically got a data center in a box. So what I wanted to do today was really give you an idea, a bit of a flavor around what this box can do, what's contained within it, some of the benefits, some of the features, and a bit of an overview of what a lot of people don't quite realize this unit is capable of. So I've got quite a fancy animation here, so bear with me as I work my way through it. But ultimately, this box is made up of nodes, okay? So if I just take you back very quickly, just so I can show you how that looks. If we go into the front end of the unit, so at the top you'll see there's 25 disks. So those disks can be SSD, they can be SAS, they can be SATA, they can be NVMe. So this box is future ready. The way that it works is it effectively allocates that storage out to the blade infrastructure in a number of different ways. So you can make pools that are direct to disk, directly to host, sorry. You can make pools that are accessible via all of the nodes within it. Or effectively you can just write them straight to the operating system. It's entirely up to you how you want to configure those pools. The nice thing about it is you've got the flexibility to allocate them wherever and however you want, which I think is fantastic, to be honest with you. And we see customers that do things like these. You might have 10 here that are used as really slow SATA archives. You could have the first 5 as really high, really fast, really expensive SSDs for your boot times and your OS and your SQL databases and your high-end apps. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that, but the option's there. And that's kind of the whole message of the Dell Vertex. The option is there. If you look down towards the bottom here, you've got, in this particular configuration, you have 2 of the M640 nodes, and you have 1 of the M830 nodes. The 830 is designed to be a really, really high-performing, dense box, in effect. Now, you'll notice that it takes 2 of the node chassis areas up, so it's full height instead of half height. Bear that in mind when speccing these units out, because ultimately you can either have 4 of the half heights, 2 of the full heights, or 2 half and 1 full. It's entirely up to you. Again, the art of the possible. You can do what you want with these boxes, but you have to be thinking about these things before you order, because they can be a bit of a nightmare to change retrospectively. So if we go forward then to that M830 node, just pull that out with my very fancy animation there. So the way that the M830 node is, as I said, it's a very, very scalable, very, very feature-rich box. This particular unit is very, very good at delivering high compute performance. So this is all around VDI workloads. This is useful for high levels of computation. So if you've got programs that are really hitting your CPU, this is probably the box for you. 48 DIMM slots in there, so we can have 3 terabytes of RAM in this box, which is incredible. I don't yet really have a use case for that, but if you want to if you want to talk to me about options for that, please do. I'll just get rid of this and just break down some of the options within it for you so you can have a look around. Basically, this is full height server. If we scroll to the back here, you'll see any customers that are running VMware, this is the redundant SD. So you can run VMware on an individual host and have the redundant SD, so redundancy built in. You've also got your network scalability at the back there as well. So pop over to this one. Pick whatever network adapter you want, 10 gig or 1 gig, fiber, whatever you like. That's all in there at the back and interchangeable. And then at the back here as well, you've also got the vFlash media. So ultimately, if you're using iDRAC 8 or iDRAC, the 8th edition of iDRAC as it now is, any version of Enterprise, effectively, the vFlash will act for additional system tasks. So things like you're going to upgrade the firmware, you want to make sure that you've got a rollback plan in place for ITIL standards and stuff. Make sure you have this option selected, and it basically means it will write the firmware into there before it makes the change, make the change. If for some reason something doesn't work, you can always revert back. Quite a handy, nice little option to have in that high-end box there. If I just pop this box back in, one thing we didn't cover in there is the RAM. So this box can actually do 1.5 terabytes per node, so a grand total of 6 terabytes of RAM in this single 5U box, which is quite incredible, especially for people who are doing high-end user workloads, so things like your VDI computing workloads. This is a great option for you guys. I don't think I really need to walk you through hard drives too much, but ultimately, as I think I've said before there, the options are to do NVMe, the options are for SAS, SATA, SSD, whatever you really want to do, you can do in there. There is a limit of 25 disks, so bear that in mind for the 2.5s. For 3.5, you can have a 12 disk bay, or there are additional expansion options to consider as well. If I just take the lid off there, something that is really fantastic for those who haven't necessarily used Dell Technologies before is the chassis management controller, otherwise known as the CMC. So if you did catch it there, and I want to pop it back for you so you can have a look. Place the CMC in there. So the CMC ultimately fits right in the middle. That is the heart of the machine. The CMC can allocate storage to individual hosts. It controls all the firmware, it controls the life cycle, it controls absolutely everything around what gets allocated to what. So the CMC is one of the most important parts. If I just scroll over to the top here, you can also see here you've got 5 slots for PCIe. There are a further 3 hidden away behind this chassis here that we can't quite take off. So that's 8 PCIe cards that can go into this blade, and then the CMC that we just referred to there ultimately can dish out those PCIe cards wherever amongst any of those hosts that it wants to. So a great use case for this might be to throw 25 gig networking into something like PCIe 2, allocate it onto host 3. So that host 3 then has a dedicated 25 gig infrastructure network sent straight to it. Now in the back end of this unit is a 10 gig integrated interlink as well. So these hosts that are running at the front, these 4 hosts, or 3 hosts in this case, are all connected via a backplane at 10 gig. The reason I mention this is that a lot of schools that we talk to haven't got the infrastructure or the budget to support a 10 gig network yet. Now, granted, they are few and far between, but they do exist, and people don't yet have the budget to do it. If that is you, you can rest assured that actually this might count as a bit of your networking budget, in the sense that these localized infrastructure hosts will all operate within each other at 10 gig. So ticks the box there for a lot of people that are struggling to get that additional budget allocated. Up at the top here, I'll see if I can pull it out. I'm pretty sure I can. We have the RAID controller module. So for those of you that are familiar with the Dell Technologies, it's the PERC 8. So a good controller card effectively means you can support and run all of the usual RAID specs that you're overly familiar with, and I won't bore you with on this particular webinar. If I take you around to the back, I'll just pop the lid back on that for a moment. So we've got 4 power supplies. So we've got redundant power supplies allocated, not necessarily directionally to each host. So if one fails, your host will fail at the front, but they're sharing the load over all 4. That CMC that we just looked at inside the machine is what's responsible for allocating that power resource internally. So again, the heart of the machine, as I've said before, that's doing all of the clever stuff. We've got 2 management ports on the back running at 1 gig. So they will go straight into your management networks. And then as you can see, there are your 3 and your 5 PCIe expansion slots. We do have use cases where some customers are going forward and putting NVMe PCIe cards in here as well. So you can allocate that then directly to one host or to a number of hosts. And some people might like to use the 830 as a compute node, as I said. So a lot of schools and colleges are using it in this way. And they'll have the NVMe in the back here. And then they'll allocate that into an 830 node at the front. So you've got a really high-performing box with high-performing storage all thrown together. Now something else that's really interesting, and if you're quite sad like me, is these 4 units here. I can just pull those out for you. Here we go. So the reason that this box is predominantly pitched towards small business offices and remote branches, the fact that it's so quiet and so self-contained. So what Dell Technologies did in the back here is they fitted 2 fans per blower into the rear of the chassis. Now, whilst that does mean that, yes, it does sound like an F-35 at startup, once it's got used to its startup and its running temperature, it's actually really, really quiet, and it minimizes the fact that you need to cool the product as well. So this works really well where air conditioning is a bit of a premium. Maybe you don't necessarily have a data center available within the school, then this is a great product. If we just look back at the power supplies there as well, it's 1100 watt power supply. They can be configured in an array of options. So as you can see at the bottom there, 1 and 1, 2 and 1, 3 and 1, or 2 and 2. It's entirely up to you. You can have 2 power supplies which power the entire chassis, and an additional 2 power supplies as being highly available hot swap. Or you can simply have 2 power supplies, 1 and 1. Not have as much resilience, but ultimately it's probably not what we'd look to recommend. I'm going to pop that back in and spin the chassis around. I'll pull one of the front nodes out there. So this is the M630. So this is the half height node. Most common box that we sell, if I'm honest with you, within the chassis itself. 24 DIMMs and up to 18 cores, so plenty of throughput, plenty of capacity for RAM. Even useful for VDI, if I'm totally honest with you. We don't necessarily see too many of the high-performing boxes, but very dense, very flexible, very efficient. Within this box, it's entirely agent-free. That's a really important fact to this. So this box speaks directly to the CMC that we keep referring to, which tells it how to do everything, how to allocate the storage, how to allocate the performance, the power, the works. The Xenon E5 series processors, you can have 2 of those. They're built within there. And there's 48 DIMM slots in there, which allow expansion to 1.5 terabytes of RAM. So again, very, very resource hungry box. You can put whatever you want in it, and it will pretty much deliver anything that you want. In the back here, for the VMware customers, we have the redundant embedded SD cards as well. So that's built into the back of the unit. I'll just spin that unit back around here. So it's built into the back here. And then we also have, as I mentioned earlier on, same as the 830 series, the vFlash media, and again, over to the networking adapter. So you can pick whatever networking adapter you want, which talks into the box itself. And that, ultimately, is the Dell Vertex in a nutshell. Thanks for watching. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I really appreciate everyone putting their time aside to review this video. As I've said a number of times, we genuinely believe that the Dell Vertex is an unloved, fantastic data center in a box. It really does fit the bill for people looking for a low-cost entry enterprise solution. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues who will be happy to help, and hopefully we will talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.